Welcome to Framework. I am John, one of the hosts of Framework. With me, as always, is the other host of Framework, Al. How are you today, Al?
I'm all right, John. Fighting off a little bit of a cold, but we have some hot D to discuss.
It's time to talk about the hot D.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And
In
the
detail.
Latrap. Yeah, I think you have to roll the double R.
Yeah. What a clumsy, terrible title that is, even without just using the letters. Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power.
Yes, the doubling up on the word ring.
Inelegant, clumsy.
Not even one singular, one plural. It's rings and rings. That's. I didn't realize I had opinions about that particular bit of titling grammar, but just no, that I guess I have notes there.
Mm-hmm. They should have just called it one of the two.
Yeah, either one would have been fine. Do you think would people have been confused by the branding if it was just Rings of Power?
And if that's the problem, call it Lord of the Rings. Who gives a shit?
The Second Age.
It's better. Yeah.
I mean, in a way, I guess credit to House of the Dragon or HBO or whatever for not feeling that they had to make it Game of Thrones presents House of the Dragon.
Is it not though? Isn't it Game of Thrones House of the Dragon technically? God Hot
no.
D.
I think it's just called. I mean, it just says House of the Dragon on the screen. I guess, and they reused the theme song from the original show, so maybe that is even more.
Oh, it's completely in thrall to Game of Thrones proper. It is. I mean, that may be my complaint with the show, but yeah. Look, okay. So we talked about these briefly a little while ago, and it's kind of nice to come back and report that I think both shows improved in the back half. Both shows got better. I enjoyed both as they finished out. I think one was a little better than the other, but for the most part, I was pretty happy with both of these and how they landed.
I feel like they are both still sort of open questions to me.
I'm not sold on either necessarily.
Yeah, which is a strange, unexpected thing to have gone through a whole year. And I have a better sense of exactly why that is with House of the Dragon. Whereas Lord of the Rings, I guess I'm I don't know. Where exactly are we going from here? It's kind of seems like we're done with the Brandyfoots. Although, except for, other than Nori, the main one who went off with Gandalf. But, by the way, this wasn't obvious. We're doing full spoilers for all the finales and everything.
Full spoilers, yeah. For the first season of House of the Dragon. We're not going to talk about the book, I guess.
Right.
Because I haven't read it.
I assume they're not discarding that whole cast that they have assembled of the Hobbit people. But
the most interesting one is dead.
Well, yeah, the best actor.
Yeah, But I don't.
I like their she Samwise Gamgee, the character.
I was very surprised she didn't go with in any explicit mirroring of Samwise Gamgee.
It seemed like that was necessary. Yeah. Maybe she'll pop up just.
But that was the moment.
No, they kind of left her in charge, so I guess they can't really just have her stow away or follow them.
It seems like if they didn't do it right then, to quote the original movies / original books in a more explicit way, then they're probably not doing it at all. Would be my guess. But who knows? They could do whatever they want with the Harfoots at this point. Kind of feel like I got their whole deal and their whole story already, and our hero Proudfoot Nori is probably going to be an ongoing concern, and that'll be how hobbits are in the show.
That would be fine by me. I don't really need more of them in their caravan. I like having her as a sidekick for Gandalf.
Are we sure it's Gandalf? We're pretty sure it's.
Yeah, we're sure. The follow your nose thing.
Yeah,
to the point of I will generally play shows, especially if things that are of the prequel variety and this indebted to the larger franchise stuff for subverting my expectations or surprising me. But if that, the follow your nose level of detail, it turns out to be a misdirect, I'll just be kind of annoyed by it.
That's yeah.
Because it's not like they can really blow my mind with who else it might be. Like, I guess it could be him or Saruman, right? That's the only possibility.
Right. It would have to be one of the other Istari. And I guess, yeah, he could be Radagast.
Oh, yay. That'll really light my hair on fire. Like, I think if they had gone with Radagast in the beginning, I would have been fine with that. And I would be like, oh, okay, they're not, it's their Gandalf figure in this show, but they're separating it. They're doing their own thing with it. But at this point, that's not that's a surprise card you can play to any level of delight.
It is. This show has been kind of punishingly in just hooked on this sort of surprise reveal format that they're doing with Sauron as well, and with like what twist they can throw at you, and like it's Mordor after all, which was, I feel like that was the reveal of the end of 2 episodes, that it was Mordor.
I mean, yes, the reveal of the name on the map was so goofy that they felt the need to do it, in the Lord of the Rings font or whatever. But
yeah,
I was weird. The surprise reveal of Mount Doom was a bigger, more effective shock for me than the surprise reveal of Sauron, the actual bad guy.
I agree. I didn't love the surprise reveal of Sauron. I did think the Mount Doom reveal was cool, and that was one of the few moments of prequel stuff just sort of falling into place that I really did kind of like.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes as annoying as it can be, where every single thing in the story is just sort of like, this is how Mithril started. Look, it's the Balrog. There he is. All that stuff, which makes up a very large part of this show. The reveal of Mount Doom was pretty cool. And I do kind of get a little bit of a endorphin kick every time one of those stupid things shows up. And, I mean, in a way, it's a shame and a problem with the show that it is so indebted and so prequely and so just reliant on these reveals. But they're kind of working for me. Yeah.
Well, okay. I mean, Mount Doom is the one, and Mordor more generally is the one that totally worked for me, because it was the one where it was a genuine misdirect and surprise that I didn't. I guess I knew generally that storyline was going to be about sort of the founding of Mordor, but how that took place and like the timing of it did take me by surprise. Because
it was that dude, sort of, that one trader guy did it.
Yeah. Well, and Adar did it, I guess.
Right,
I thought that Sauron had to become personally involved before that beat could happen. So that was a bit more effective to me than, I mean, and the tease of the Balrog was kind of nice, but not surprising. We know exactly what's going on there.
Yeah.
Maybe if we don't know the details, we know the gist that they wake up a Balrog. Balrog is mean, and
the Balrog is called Durin's Bane. That's his. Right. Yeah.
I don't really know. I don't have a huge sense of. Can they do a whole season of them like fighting with the Balrog, or does the Balrog just chase them out in one go, and it's over with?
They got big Khazad-dûm problems. Honestly, I don't know how they're gonna. I mean, I think you saw some of that this season. That was the most inactive, uninteresting plot line. I mean, I didn't mind the dwarf actors. I thought they were okay. I liked some of the design quite a bit. Obviously, all the design on the show is great. But man, what a static, nowhere story.
I think the dwarf actors were better than okay. I think that we need to be on the same page here, that we are a pro Peter Mullen podcast.
Was that Durin? He was good. They were fine. They were doing exactly what they needed to. But
I believe he was Durin the third.
Okay.
And we're down to it. Our like young, Elrond's buddy Durin is the fourth, I want to say. I'd have to pull up the thing, the cast list during the episode again to be sure.
Right, of course. A constant thing. It is also the only place where there was a little bit of overlap with Hot D and the sort of internecine political struggles, generational.
I think that Numenor was intended to be that, but that's another area where I'm a hard time like anticipating next season. Getting excited about, because I'm not really sure where we stand there. Like, I guess the sick king that we met like for one scene died, and that's a big deal. And now
The
I don't
black
know. I
sails in the
guess
harbor, that was cool.
that was, yeah. I mean, it was
Yeah,
nicely sort of delivered imagery there,
yeah.
but that character didn't mean anything to us. The
No.
character that witnessed his death and got his last words is somebody who we met for like 2 scenes, and I don't really remember. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
Isildur's sister, right? That's what it is.
Sure.
And they've
Yeah.
got the advisor guy that, you know, is, I guess, going to try and supplant the king's daughter, maybe. But
Hmm.
we got a
They,
little bit of time with him in one of the earlier episodes, and I don't really remember what his deal was at all already.
I mean, I'm kind of interested in them trying to do political struggles and Game of Thrones stuff, but you know, they have an unfortunate comparison on the other channel that is always going to have the advantage there. So I don't know. The more,
Yeah, well, and they haven't. I don't think they've demonstrated a particularly deft hand with that stuff thus far.
No.
And I would like to be done with mithril-related intrigue, if possible.
I think we're in for the long haul on mithril. The rings have mithril. It's an alloy within them. It's, you know, it's gonna be mithril up and down. I think for the rest of the show, we gotta do whatever's going on in Khazad-dûm is gonna be very mithril central.
I'm not saying I need mithril expelled from the show. It's just
Enough of this goddamn mithril. I know. Right?
yeah, maybe a bit less scenes of just pondering over this hunk of metal, you know, and its magical properties. That, you know, whatever, we know the elves aren't leaving, so
right.
This drama around whether they can, I don't know, just warm themselves around a hunk of this metal to cure their blood rot. I don't really know, but I got the general gist from the tree leaves turning black that that was bad, and it was representing the elves, you know,
the fall of elves and
yes,
the inevitable kind of march of the end of their. I guess this. What is this? The second age. I think.
Yeah.
Are we in second age right now?
We are, I believe, because the first was Morgoth and all that, and then now we're in the second, and the third will be the movies and books.
Is the second age end with the defeat of Sauron?
That's my understanding.
Okay, I
am not a Middle Earth historian.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so this show is clearly building to the prologue of Fellowship of the Rings, right? I mean, that is the end of this show. It feels like has to be.
Seems like it would have, yeah. I don't know how else you could do it,
and that is a structure for a show. Like
sure,
what happened? How, you know, the battle, the last battle, the last alliance of men, elves, and dwarves, or whatever, to fight Sauron in Mordor. That opens Fellowship of the Ring. I mean, yeah, let's tell that story. Seems like a logical thing to do. And I mean, there was a question about what this show even was for a while, and I think now we know what it is, and it's that. And that's, I guess if you give it some thought, probably the only thing it could be, because they don't have all the Silmarillion material, which isn't particularly cinematic anyway, and that's something that people know, and that we can do. Okay, well, here's all this thing. Here's the stuff you recognize. Here's how it happened. Here's the birth of Mordor, the birth of Gandalf, et cetera, et cetera.
It would be weird to do this whole show and not do that, to make that stuff. So there's a similar question, I guess. It's that it affects Hot D as well, and it relates to Lord of the Rings, the original Lord of the Rings. Like how much of the scouring of the Shire material do you include, the aftermath stuff? Because I think it would be strange if they did a whole season with Isildur after that giant, you know, world-ending battle.
Yeah, that's gonna be the end. Yeah,
yeah. So it can't go after that. With House of the Dragon and that source material, there's some genuinely interesting stuff that comes sort of after the major like war, like the last battles are fought. But I just kind of wonder, how do you handle that? Do you really keep going for a whole season after the major battles are over? It feels like that it's impossible for that not to be deflating in some way. But that's a question for several years down the line, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't know if they even have to have a solution to that yet. I mean, I do feel like that they have to have some idea of what this is. I think both shows have a beginning, middle, end planned out. Like, I feel like they know exactly how long both these should go. They certainly should, you know, given the nature of the stories they're telling.
Yeah, George R. R. Martin has said like what his ideal length would be, which was like 5 total seasons, I think.
Hmm.
And I believe Lord of the Rings was just greenlit for 5 seasons right out of the gate,
I
as
think so too. Yeah,
that was the idea. So I think,
four or
I guess they're
five.
both working in that same. Was it 4?
One of the two. I'm not. I don't remember now.
Um,
Five would make sense, I guess.
I mean, well, we don't really know, but you could do it. I mean,
Yeah, they can do
you
whatever they
can
want. Yeah,
do a
but
lot in one season of television, and 8 or 10 hours is a long time to work with if you know what you're doing and what you're working toward.
well, I'm just
Um,
thinking along the lines of like I imagine they want this to be a flagship show for this decade.
yeah, you would kind of assume that they don't greenlight these projects of this size and expense in the hopes of getting 2 years out of it at this point.
Yeah, like Wheel of Time. If Wheel of Time, just decided after one more season, it turns out we're not going to finish this, I don't think anyone would be terribly surprised. But this one is clearly intended to be the show for Amazon for a while.
Yeah, it almost
Mhm.
seems like there's it, I guess it's too big to failness. Just they
Yes.
can't really, even if this was a disaster, which we're not, neither of us is claiming it is.
No.
They almost couldn't acknowledge that. they just
Well,
they just
people are
need it
watching
too
it from
much.
what I understand, and I
Yeah,
mean that's the ultimate metric, and people are talking about it, and yeah, people seem a little mad about it. But
I would say that the reaction seems more positive than negative from what I've seen. But
well, I mean mixed for sure. There's some people who have it very out for it. Some reactions I've seen to it seem to be like, I like how positive it is. I like that it's a really positive show with good energy, and that almost seems like they're liking it at House of the Dragon. So, uh, and
I can see that.
and that's fine. I understand that. God knows, but at the same time, yeah, I don't know if this. I is it almost too focus grouped, too intent on pleasing everyone to really be great or terrible? Is it a little too centrist?
I don't know if it's focus grouped because
It might not be the right word. Yeah.
I feel like if it was really trying to bear and just be crowd pleasing, the crowds would not demand more material about how the elves need to mine this particular ore to hold in their palm and cure their spiritual disease.
But I think the people really want dwarves, and they really want Balrogs, and they at least recognize Mithril.
I suppose. I don't know. Were dwarves fan favorites like from the
Oh
movies?
yeah,
I
oh
mean,
yeah, totally, totally.
oh no, I think Legolas was the standout.
But the dwarven ruins and the and
That was fun.
Gimli is a beloved character.
Is he? They didn't bring him
Yes.
back for the Hobbit. They brought back Legolas. Is all I'm saying.
Well, they also brought back 15 dwarves for the Hobbit.
That's true. They brought back Gimli's father.
If
Well, they
anything,
didn't. That
if
was
anything,
Tolkien.
yeah.
Tolkien made him do
Well,
that. They
sure.
shoehorned Legolas in for some sex appeal. I think because those movies were trying to appeal to that broad.
I guess they could have just had Gimli and had him like, well, he's 75, a young man in this, and that would have been fine. I'm almost surprised they didn't do that.
I mean, I don't know. It's not super inviting to a normie. Is my sort
Hmm.
of reason for thinking that it's not, and it's not all sunshine and roses either. I mean that battle episode got pretty gory and
A bit, a
rough.
bit. I know more than the movies.
Well, and the other thing that I don't know if this is coming, how much of this is already on the screen, and how much of it is just my outside knowledge coming to bear. But I remember one of our guests on a prior episode. I can't remember which one, but we were talking to him about Tolkien, and they were talking about Tolkien's conception of his pessimistic Catholic of conception of history as a long defeat,
Hmm.
uh, and sort of knowing that this, yeah, they're going to defeat Sauron, but still, like, everything is going to continue to deteriorate and get worse, and that the Southlands are not going to be restored, and the Numenor is going to be destroyed, and
Hmm.
Casa Dune is going to be destroyed,
Yeah, many
And
things that once were bright. Yes. Mm-hmm.
yes, and the elves will last a bit longer, but Isildur will not will ultimately have a fall. There's at
Hmm.
least maybe that's knowledge that not every audience member is bringing to bear, but it casts a certain pall over the proceedings to me.
It's interesting. I mean, I do know all that, and still kind of forgot all of it in the show. I mean, not Khazad-dûm necessarily,
Hmm.
but everything else, I was kind of like, yeah, oh yeah, I guess that is actually doomed to fall eventually. That is interesting. Hmm.
I suppose if we know that Linden, the elf city, has to fall, but they still haven't even like founded Rivendell or Lothlorien. So I
Mm-hmm.
guess there's still like more rising to be done there among some of these characters.
Well, we'll definitely get the full founding of both those places in the
Yes,
show.
for
They
sure.
would be, they have to do everything like that. What do you think of the Sauron reveal?
I thought I wasn't a huge fan of it conceptually, because it was been
Mm-hmm.
something people have been kicking around all season, and I wasn't sure it was really worth the trouble there.
Mm-hmm.
I think the actor did a really good job of selling it when we got to it.
Yeah.
Was not really sure if he was good or not yet at that point. If the actor was good,
Right. Right.
was a good actor, not if the character was good. Um, but I had thought I had sort of signed on to the theory that the Halbrand character's arc was going to be that he becomes a Nazgul. So
Yeah, you mentioned that, and I thought, oh, that's actually cool. Of
yeah,
course, he would be a king of man. Of course, he would be a Nazgul, and I would kind of got into
and don't
that.
you need to include at least one or two of them in 5 seasons worth, like
I'm sure
of
we'll
that
get
arc?
them. I'm sure we'll get to those guys.
Yeah,
We have to tell this story. But yeah, that would have made sense. But of course, they weren't ever even thinking along those lines. They always had him down as Sauron, I guess.
yeah.
I I,
I think
I didn't love the reveal simply because, like, wait a minute, the Southland Kings, that line's been broken centuries ago. I wasn't crazy about that.
Yeah, there's some of the logistics of it are iffy. How did he end up on the ship out there? Was that an accident, or did he somehow set himself up to be there just to find Galadriel and do all this? Like, how much Kaiser Soze is there here? I kind of like the idea that Sauron is sort of like recovering from a defeat that was handed to him by this other secondary villain. Uh, we're seeing sort of different elements of him. One thing I wasn't sure that I would be a good idea that I wanted, but was sold to me in the finale was seeing Sauron as sort of the sweet talker and
Hmm.
the he's kind of coming on to Galadriel, uh,
Oh yeah.
and not just being the giant armored evil overlord that will crush all resistance guy that you know there's talk in the originals about how Sauron and the rings as more as the ring as this like the seductive power of it. But Sauron always seemed like more of a blunt instrument in those movies, especially.
Oh, very
Um,
much so. And I would, yeah. Well, in the lore, in the lore, there is, that I was a little surprised how hard this show came down anti Sauron from the start. Which I guess who's kidding who at that point? Everyone knows Sauron's the bad guy going into the show, but yeah, he was the sweet talker. He was the guy. The lore says he made a gift of all the rings of power to all the races of Middle Earth, which is how
mhm.
I think Kate Blanchett goes into that in the prologue of Fellowship of the Rings. They were all gifts, and the way they kind of threaded that knot in having him instrumental in Celebrimbor designing and creating the Elven rings. It was like, okay, I get what you're doing here. I don't know how they sell it after this point for the additional rings that have to show up.
Neither do I, and title of the show notwithstanding, I don't need a ton more material of actual physically crafting rings.
I think you're going to get it.
Yay! Yeah. Look, there's 17 more
Yeah.
by my count,
Is it?
but
I think it's 16. What is it? 7 for the Dwarf Lords and their Hollow Stone,
and
9 for
nine
mortal men,
plus one.
and the one, of course, the one. Yeah.
Well, don't make me rhyme at you. um, no, it's you can do a montage. You can knock out all 9 in one sequence by my estimation.
We gotta get some of these rings churned out, man. We got 17 more to get through.
Yeah, there's stuff to do. I mean, I want to get back to Adar. I felt his absence after the.
Yeah,
I guess it was
he was
there
a little
nine
bit.
total,
He was a
nine
little
total
bit.
episodes.
8. It was 8.
It was 8. So he kind of just was out of it after the 6th episode, even though he's still alive.
He pops up in the 7th one for a moment for the
just
Mordor
just
reveal.
Yeah. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But he's pretty much done after that 6th episode, and
yeah,
which he's not even on screen a lot in the 6th episode. Really, I guess he's got like the scene where he comes into the hall where they're holed up and threatens them. But
well, he definitely had his showcase episode, and I'm sure we'll come back around to him next season.
I'm glad he's still around. He is what I want to see more of. I guess I am sort of intrigued as to what Gandalf and his Hobbit friend are going to do when they go into sort of the uncharted regions that we haven't seen in other filmed adaptations.
That is my favorite stuff in the show, actually. Yeah. Harfoots and Gandalf, presumably.
And Numenor, I don't know. They made the flooding vision look pretty cool, so I'm kind of looking forward to Destroy, like just breaking, knocking down the tower of blocks over there. But I don't want to spend a ton of time there, I guess.
I mean, there's so much more Middle Earth they can do and cover, and presumably will. There's a lot left here on the map to fill in. And, we got to see the origin of the Shire, of course. A bunch of other origins of lands yet to come.
I don't know if I need that origin, but I'm sure we'll be getting it.
Yeah.
I could fill in the blanks that the hobbits settled down and took up farming, but I don't need a ton. but we're going to get that. And what you mentioned there, I think that's a good bridge to House of the Dragon, because what I'm looking forward to over there, we just finally started to get a little bit of in the finale, is filling in the rest of the map, because I felt
that's cool.
I am not super hot on this first season. I'm still all in on the show, but kind of think this first season was a misfire. And that largely comes from having read the source material, and if I hadn't, I don't know if I would have much confidence in this going forward. But I think this is just ultimately a really weird, really structured season of television.
Definitely that.
And because I know sort of at least the gist of what's coming, I know that structure is not going to hold into the next season. So I'm like, okay, fine. We'll finally get into the part they're waiting for. I mean, the gist of it is they probably should have started this season in like episode 7 or 8.
Well, episode 8 was the big dinner party with that ends, that Viserys dies after, and
finally knocks off. Yeah,
that could definitely have been the first episode of the show if they wanted. It's all the characters together, all the relationships. You can establish them there. You can kind of get a sense. You can even the bastard strong children stuff is prominent enough there that you could kind of get the whole gist of that there. You could even have it be a little bit vague, even if it's an open secret. But you could have done that. They could have done that. As someone who has not read the show, or read the book, excuse me, I think I actually really appreciated the buildup. It was very much a long buildup for the last 3 episodes. And I kind of liked having, in a way, sort of a historical context for it. It seems like how you adapt a book that is presented as a historical text. And I get that it wasn't as gripping. The first half of the season was kind of had a slight kind of eat your vegetables quality to it. I was still kind of taken with it. I think the performances helped, but like having it, seeing how messy these characters are, seeing the choices they made and why they made them to get to the point where there are all these goddamn kids running around and these relationships and this these nested conflicts within conflicts that that I think that will pay off. It feels like it's going to pay off now that I can name 25 characters.
There are definitely payoffs coming.
Yeah.
The thing I was referring to about the map specifically, though, is that it felt like we spent this entire season sort of shuffling around a couple 3 locations.
Yeah.
In one sort of central inset in this giant map that we, just some fucking chef's kiss, fantastic, elaborate map scenes in this finale. But,
God, that table map is cool.
it's so much fun.
Did they
I love
always
it.
have that? Could they always have lit up the map at Dragonstone and they just didn't?
I don't think we ever saw it lit up. Maybe we saw it. Maybe when Stannis was there first, we didn't see him actually light it. But I think maybe like we saw the lettering yellow up. But anyway,
I could see Stannis being like, "No, we don't like the map in here." That could be his thing. Yeah.
but just finally, like, all right, we're getting. We went to Storm's End at least. That was a new place, and that was nice.
Yeah, that was exciting. I was like, "Ooh, Storm's End, finally."
Yeah, a place that we heard about in original Game of Thrones, but never saw on screen. And it looks cool. I mean, even granted, it gets a boost by that incredible shot of just seeing Vagar, the dragon, looking like a kaiju in the background in the rain. Just great. Fantastic.
That whole sequence, excellent.
Yeah, but meanwhile, the other brother is heading to the Vale of Arryn and to the north, where places we remember from the old days, but we have not seen any glimpses of in this show, and I would like to get some glimpses of them. And Damon is talking about he's going to Harrenhal. Like, yeah, let's see some new environments here, and new characters will come with that, which is also good. But
now, Harrenhal is already a cursed place in this continuity, right? The original destruction of it happened during the reign of the first
Targaryen.
Yeah, okay.
During it was burned down in the conquest of the Targaryens. Sort of their first object lesson in.
That could have been a season
hide
2
from our dragons.
That might be the next season. Honestly, they might do that after this show if this hits hard enough.
I mean, maybe that. So you said like that this is how you would adapt a book that is a historical text, and that the book is written as a historical text. It starts at the conquest of the first Targaryen that come to Westeros. I guess first 3. It's they talk about Aegon the Conqueror, but he had his 2 sister wives with him. And how I figured, like, you would start this is you would kind of start with Viserys' death for the Dance of Dragons, because that's the section of the book that jumps out as, well, this is a show. Like, this is where it gets crazy. The initial conquest of Westeros stuff, it felt a little too one-sided to me to be as exciting as
you're right.
When Game of Thrones is really humming.
It's like Robert's Rebellion. You can't really get too much out of it. You could do a season, but
Robert's Rebellion too, I think, is a little, at least more evenly matched. There's a bit more back and forth there. That's the fun part of Game of Thrones for me, anyway. That things are can be upended so quickly and change so fast. Whereas when one side has the dragons and the other side, is not even like united against them really. The Targaryens don't take many losses there to like keep things interesting across an entire season, is my point. But yeah, Harrenhal was destroyed during that. Right. It was the sort of great fortress of the predecessors of the Greyjoys, the old Iron Islanders.
Harren the Black, of course.
Yes. And they got destroyed there by the Targaryens, and then the Greyjoys sort of took their place as the new Lord Reavers of the Iron Islands, I believe they call them. Anyhow,
they're not Lord Paramounts, right? They are.
No. We went, but now the Riverlands belong to other houses, and we're going to spend some time there in the future seasons. Meet a lot of Rivermen and some houses that we recognize from before, and some that we don't. And there's some characters there that I think are going to be great to see on screen. Looking forward to that stuff. But it took us a whole season of get here, and it's not just, I guess, too much backstory, or I guess it is sort of pacing, like, but it's not that things move too slowly. Like, I guess you could have done a whole season that sort of like takes most of its time building up to Viserys dying here and setting up these conflicts.
They did, that's absolutely what they did.
But I'm saying I think when you stack it up against the original Game of Thrones, it's not even moving that much slower necessarily than the first season of Game of Thrones did. Whereas, because both shows, I guess, start out with one king in power who has been reigning more or less peacefully, but has flaws as a leader and as a king that are going to manifest when they die. And they die around episode 7, I think it is in the original one, episode 8 here of the first season.
Like, about.
And then Succession Wars is what take up the rest of the series basically.
Well, we're very much on familiar ground there. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
structurally, it felt like that's always where we were headed. Not so much with Eddard, but with Robert. Like that we would be having Viserys would have a similar role to Robert Baratheon in the original series, and then we'd be off to the races. And I mean, what complicated this was the time jumps and the different actors and the wigs and the sedentary kind of pacing occasionally, as well as they being locked into King's Landing so much, and just kind of having to recontextualize and get your bearings again, whenever the cast changed every couple episodes. But I do kind of feel like it was, for me, worth the swing. Like, I get it now. I get all these characters. I get what their deal is. I get the resentments. I get the misconceptions that they are having. I thought that the handling of Viserys' death and his last words with Alicent, I thought that was perfect. It was really cool. Set us on a good path. She feels justified forever now in what she's doing. It makes so much sense to me why they spent the time doing what they're doing. Could they have done that in a way that was a little more entertaining right out the gate? Yeah, sure. I don't know. I'm kind of okay with it, though. Yeah.
But this is what I'm saying is like, it's not that there's too many episodes before we get to the war, because it's about the same number as in the original Game of Thrones. But the original Game of Thrones, that was probably those first 6 or 7 episodes probably spanned, I don't know, 6 months to a year's worth of time frame. And this one went across 25 years. And I think that's
not great.
Sort of
not great.
And none of those individual hours of TV are bad hours of TV.
Well, that was what made it okay, I think, was that, it wasn't great right out the gate. Neither was Game of Thrones, really, when you were just wading into it. I mean, I think in retrospect, it's really impressive how much exposition those early episodes handled deftly. But I remember at the time, people were like, I'm not getting all this. I remember that being a thing, the first half of the first season of Game of Thrones. I had read the books to that, and I was like, oh, no, they're doing it really well. Trust me. But
things really picked up at a certain point in that season. I remember sitting up at a certain point and went, okay, this, I kind of had settled in thinking that this thing that happened was going to be in the season finale. And now it just happened at the end of episode 5. Like, okay, so maybe it's this. And then at the end of episode 6, like, that's what I thought season finale was going to be now. And now we're really tearing through this stuff a lot faster.
It was handled more deftly, for sure.
Yeah.
But it is also adapting a book directly that is framed as a television show much more than, from what I understand.
For sure. It's going scene for scene in the book.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost exactly the book. There's a couple extra scenes that they threw in, but those were great. And for the most part, it has a very explicit blueprint that it's following. And I mean, I guess this does too, but it requires dramatization more.
Right. You can't adapt scene for scene from this book, as it's not structured in scenes that way. But you still have to adapt it. And the way I would have thought to do it would be that, okay, you probably do a premiere, maybe it's even extra long, but where you're doing a ton of setup, and then of the potential conflicts here, and it ends with Viserys passing away, and then we're kind of off to the races. And they instead took 8 episodes to get there, which again, I think even you could have done 8 episodes more smoothly, but compacted it all into a time frame of a couple of years rather than 25 years, because
probably
the 25-year thing really, like I said, none of these individual hours are really incomprehensible or bad to watch, but it just got so herky-jerky having to reset every episode and introduce a lot of the same characters over and over again, the same conflicts over and over again, and still not feeling like, for all that time, we didn't introduce that many characters. Like, there's so many more to come. we all the characters that we know are Targaryens and Valerians at this point.
But I think that's part of it too. Is that they all have similar names and similar hair, and they're being played by different actors every few. So they put in maybe a little extra effort into making. Well, I don't know if even that was terribly successful. Like, some of them obviously make sense, and I get Aemond. Okay, I get what you're doing. I can't really differentiate. Let's say Daemon's daughters at this point. I don't know what their individual
Sure.
deals are, or
Yeah.
or the strong kids, or there's a lot of characters that I'm kind of just like a little less clear on, but that's fine. There's more seasons to come, and maybe they're not important that I really know the difference between.
Didn't it seem like wonky to you that we're in episode 9 and it's all about crowning Alicent's son Aegon
Yeah,
to be the next king, and they're still having to kind of like explain to us who he is, secondhand.
I kind of got who Aegon was at that point. I mean,
I thought that was the weirdest bit of recasting, actually, how they recast Aegon and Aemond from, originally Aegon was played by David Tennant's son, and they recast him into a character who looks the exact same age as the younger version of him.
They did,
whereas the Aemond guy grew up
like 15 years. Yeah,
15 years, yeah. Which I think is supposed to be somewhat intentional, that there's a more arrested development with Aegon, and Aemond really came into his own once he got a dragon. And
well, having not read the book, what I take from that is I imagine Aemond is going to be a more important character than Aegon. That is my guess. I don't want to know. I kind of do want to know now. I kind of those last few episodes I enjoyed so much that I almost want to go and read this goddamn book now. But I'm also kind of enjoying taking this show as it comes and watching it that way.
I mean, I would recommend people reading it before the series started, because it doesn't spoil as much as the original Ice and Fire novels would for the original show.
Yeah, but I want to know who dies and how they die. That's the stuff I'm interested in.
Yeah, who dies. I mean, who dies where and how, generally. But so this is the other thing, that there's. I had been arguing with some people about who felt like the show was softening the depiction of some of these characters that they thought were more like bigger bastards in the book, and now especially the main like female leads, making them like, oh, it's all misunderstandings, and Alicent actually means well. And I find it just a weird argument, because the book does not establish what people's like inner selves are, inner motivations or core characters are. It's just like, well, they did this and they did that, and they died on this day. And I kind of liked, so I do like this, the way that the show was approaching that. One, because I don't think it's not bad to have more sympathetic characters or relatable characters. And I liked how it was setting it up such that a lot of the focus was on how this war was sort of inevitable. It didn't require anybody really wanting it for it to happen. It's just the way that all this succession stuff and patriarchy is set up, and the way Viserys chose his heir to be the less popular choice, but didn't back that choice as strongly as he needed to, was setting this up for division and chaos.
This is all his fault. This is all Viserys is doing. All of this. I mean, he has his reasons, but he fucked this up, and he's probably the most likable character on the show to some extent. Like he is a decent king, a decent person. He blows all of this though. Like this is all his fault. And yeah, this is of course what happens after he dies. I do like that Alicent has a reason to do what she does here, with usurping, that she believes herself to be in the right. That makes sense, because otherwise, I mean, it's already a hard sell. Even knowing what she heard, it's a hard sell to be on her side at this point, because it's so clearly like a breaking the succession. But she of course she's
is it that clearly though? It seems like most of the people in the realm, or not the peasants, but the nobles that fight over these things, prefer to stick with a guy regardless of what the king's wishes are.
Well, there's two parts to that. The first being like her kids suck. Her kids are assholes. They're the worst kind of entitled Joffrey-esque shits. They're this version show of this.
I think Joffrey set a really high bar there.
Yeah, well, they're chasing that banner. They're not quite at his level, but they're trying to be. And the other part is, Viserys was pretty fucking clear that that Rhaenyra should inherit the title. Now, another nice thing about having these early seasons of setup, like I would not know why Viserys was leaning so hard on that. And, after the first 2 episodes, I was pretty sure that the Civil War would be between Rhaenyra and Daemon. Like the shifting places and positions at the table has been part of the fun of that. And I've seen it happen organically. The 25-year lead up to this, getting all the players in position, I think it really has paid off, actually. And I think it will continue to pay off down the line as we see, the sort of the fires that forged these characters and the choices that they're making. I would say it didn't make for the most gripping season of television right now, even though I did really like it.
That's it. I think it was gripping for the hour it was on.
Yeah.
But the fact that one episode did not lead into the next until these last couple very smoothly. So it was, I was wary of resetting so frequently throughout this run of episodes. And I'm glad that going forward, we will not have to be doing that. And things will be moving at a much faster pace now.
It was definitely imperfect, but I mean, those 3 last episodes kicked all sorts of ass with the setup, and I feel like we're going to continue to just live in that tone and mode for the rest of the show, probably. Like that's where it's going to be. And
those last year episodes were good. However, I'd say they contain, for all my griping here, I would say there were 2 actual mistakes of presentation that I think are just I mean, not that they were done accidentally, but they were bad decisions.
Sure.
And they are confined to those last 3 episodes where things are getting good. Otherwise, the grander structural issue that I take, I would not have stretched it over this long of a time frame. I think, maybe you can do it over 8 years in 8 episodes and not have to stretch it out quite so much and stick with the same actors for longer. But that's a decision that whatever.
Maybe we didn't need younger versions of Alicent and Rhaenyra. Maybe
right.
We could have gotten a lot of that information across with the adult actors. I don't know. That might have helped. Maybe it would have helped just because I missed the young Rhaenyra.
I feel like you could have gotten, the young Rhaenyra was good, but I feel like you could have gotten a ton out there if you just opened at that funeral at Driftmark where everybody is icy towards each other and all that, and just done a lot of expositional backfilling there, the way that in the early episodes of the original series, we've got we're hosting a feast for the king at Winterfell, and then we're having a tournament, and that gives a lot of opportunities for people to whisper to other characters about this other characters and their relationship to their brothers and sisters and so forth. Maybe you could have done that. But what I was getting at earlier is that the 2 things I think are just cock-ups are Rhaenys coming up through the floor of the dragon pit and murdering 100 people heedlessly, and then having an attack of conscience about killing the people that she's in the process of declaring war on. It's just a weird moment. I mean,
that was odd. I do think, though, I mean, what I took that to be at the moment was I was watching a moment that the person is going to regret. It's like, oh, you fucked up right now. You could have ended this whole thing before it began, and you fucked up. And that's going to cost, it's a bit of dramatic irony that we're going to see years down the line, how many people could have been saved and how much chaos could have been prevented if what's her goddamn name? The old woman had just...
that's Rhaenys.
Rhaenys. If she had just said Dracarys at that one moment, the whole thing doesn't happen. And living with that mistake, and living with the knowledge of that mistake is sort of a part of her story going forward, and everyone's.
I do think that they actually in the finale did some good character work to justify that, of her saying, yeah, look, I see that a civil war is about to start here, but it's not really my place to start that, because the civil war is not for me. It's she's between you guys.
But she is declaring there is the thing.
Right. So it's a weird half measure there. And, I mean, yes, a lot of the season has been about how, Viserys has taken half measures or 3/4 measures, but when a full one was called for, and that is sowing these seeds.
Yeah.
I do think that would be fine from a character perspective. It's just, they should not have put so much focus on how she was killing dozens of people in the process and drawing our attention to it while she was completely oblivious to it.
No one gives a fuck about the small folk in this show. No one. I mean, I don't think the show gives a fuck. I don't think.
No, that's the thing. If I felt like that was supposed to make us complicate our relationship with her and make us like not like or trust her more, but she's still presented as the nice one even through the finale. Like she's probably presented as the most sympathetic of anybody on the black side.
Oh, you think?
I mean, it seemed like this weird empowering moment, right? But why did you just focus? I don't know. We don't need to belabor that point forever. That's just my thing.
Okay.
I think that was a mistake, and the other mistake is I think making the death of Luke in the finale be an accident is over egging that pudding.
Okay.
What I was saying before, like I kind of liked how they were setting things up between Alicent and Rhaenyra, how like the war was going to sweep them away, even if neither of them really wanted it, and that was sort of like good, richer shading to the characters. And then I feel like this is just missing the mark because it doesn't make Aemond any more sympathetic.
Well, that's for sure. Yeah, I mean, he's still an asshole. He still sucks. Like
I was just telling my wife that it just feels like they should play the Curb Your Enthusiasm music over his face when he's like, "Oh, what did I do?"
I do like. I mean, it does remind you that they're kids, even as he looks 35 years old. He's supposed to be 16 or whatever.
That's a weird character. I mean, let me just take a low shot at this actor, by the way, because I think he's a odd-looking guy, handsome dude, but somehow looks like he's wearing like a Walgreens rubber Halloween mask of his own face.
I think the wig does not do a lot of these guys much favors. You know,
the wig, the eye patch, the scar, the now bejeweled eye under the scar. It made me keep thinking of an old Mitch Hedberg routine that culminates with him going, "Man, you got a lot of cranial accessories."
There's a bit of a Bond henchman quality to him for sure.
That's definitely what it is.
Yeah, I do think that character is a little overdone, but I know that this is a show that has a history of like Joffrey and Ramsay Bolton and these over the top villains. So I assume that's what they want here with Aemond and a few more of these.
Yeah, so it's weird to pull that punch, though.
Yes, you're right. That's true.
Because it doesn't make you like him.
I was overwhelmed by how great that scene was otherwise, though. So
the presentation was so good up until there. And then this is the escalation that's going to take us, into the war, like makes it inevitable now. Like there's no walking back from this.
I also thought that he was trying to kill the kid. Like if he wasn't trying to kill the kid, what are we doing here? Like
exactly. I guess he was just trying to give him a wedgie or something. But I mean, it's weird. It makes him look dumb and not in a more interesting way. And it also like it takes, there's a sense of tragedy to the idea that nobody wants the war, but we're sort of being swept into it anyway. But this sort of like just puts the toe over the line into, well, now it's gone from tragedy to farce.
I think there's room for that too, though. I do think there's a little room for just like, ooh, yeah. Well, I think that's kind of fun as well. I mean, there'll always be characters that are more tragic, and Aemond is not one of them.
Right. Okay. So let me ask you this: Are you currently on the greens or the blacks?
Oh, good question. I'm on the blacks.
Okay, I would say I am team green. Although I wavered in the last episode, but this is one thing I think the show has actually done very well. Even as I don't know that it's done a great job of establishing the children characters.
Yeah,
Aemond aside, he's got enough affectations going on that we don't know exactly what's going on with him, and he gets the biggest kaiju dragon, which is helpful. But in terms of sketching out the different sides of this conflict and making it so that it is an understandable conflict where we have rooting interests, but not necessarily, I want these guys to beat these guys. I want the Starks to beat the Lannisters as you start out Game of Thrones. I certainly would prefer to have Alicent and Otto in charge over Rhaenyra and Daemon.
Yes.
But when you go down a generation, I want Rhaenyra's kids in charge over Alicent's kids for sure.
Exactly. This is the problem. Here's the thing: like, how good can Alicent be if those are her kids? That's the thing. Grooming them for ruling had to be a priority if this was the move we're making, and it doesn't appear to have been. So that's kind of the game for me. That's why I'm Team Black. The kids.
I think I kind of put this though, reading between the lines anyway, put a lot of this on Viserys again, because
Yeah.
I think his kids turning out so shitty is a reflection of him distancing
Yes.
himself from his male heirs that he was waiting for so long, because he had made this decision not to make them his heirs. And so he ended up sort of not doing a ton of fathering to them, because he was uncomfortable with that decision, but he didn't want to walk it back. And that doesn't excuse how those kids turned out.
No.
But it couldn't have helped. Shocking how like nice and well adjusted Rhaenyra and Daemon's kids seem to be.
Almost unrealistic, but yeah.
Yes.
But they're fine. And I mean, they seem pretty doomed. I mean, that's some Robb Stark energy if ever I saw it. And I can't imagine that they're going to be okay. Maybe holding out a little hope for some of Daemon's kids. I mean, maybe. And that is what it comes down to. I do think, I think that this show has done an incredible job of allowing, like, possibly a 50-50 split in the audience as to where your allegiance is. And that's, something I think that shows try to do sometimes and never really are able to do. And this seems to have actually gotten to a point where you could reasonably be on either side of the conflict and still be watching the same show. That's pretty awesome. I mean, I wonder how long that'll stay. And, maybe part of that is just that everyone's so unlovely.
Yeah. I guess the cheat code, the easy route there is just to make everybody assholes so that you don't really care who wins. And that's
all about Flash. Yes.
That's the ballpark, way of getting in there. That the more difficult thing to do is make it so that, not so much that the audience is split where it's Team Edward versus Team Jacob or whatever. But that what Game of Thrones did at its best was I wasn't on one team necessarily, but I was very invested in the conflict nonetheless.
Oh, you were on Team Stark, right?
For sure, but I wasn't like, do I really want the Martells to destroy the Lannisters? Like, not exactly, but I like the Red Viper, and I like Tyrion also, and but I don't necessarily want him to kill Jaime along the way, and it got I guess you like the Starks and you didn't like the Greyjoys generally. I don't know. I guess the Deanna's sister ended up being some of the nicer people have been.
I don't know. I didn't really like them ever.
I didn't really like them either, but I felt like the show was expecting me to like his sister a lot.
I did. I mean, there are more. There's some. I think they've overstated. It has been overstated how hateful everyone on this show is. I really do think that's not quite the case. Like, yes, they're all lunatics to some extent or another, but they're all locked into this conflict, and they've given everyone reasons for acting and believing the things they do. They've gone out of their way to do that, and I guess that's what some people are objecting to. Not me. I think that's great. If anything, I mean, having just a couple monsters running around. Not a couple, a half dozen monsters running around, contrasts with everyone else nicely. Like, I don't hate Rhaenyra. I think she's kind of cool. Daemon is pretty much a just a monster, but he's a charismatic one.
He's charismatic, yeah.
And then
I don't think even Aemond is a monster on the level of Joffrey or Ramsay or Littlefinger. I think the only character on the show that is at that level is Larys Strong.
They're not trying to disguise him at all.
No.
They're making him a creepy cripple guy. That feels weird, honestly. That feels like the sort of thing you're not
honestly, I didn't even
anymore.
Like. I saw people talking about how that's like such a retrograde stereotype. I'm like, and the weird thing is, I kind of want more of him. Like,
yeah, he feels like they barely kind of touched on him, other than to make sure we know he's a creep.
Yeah, and yet maybe you do the version of it where you start later on in the thing and you're backfilling, where it's part of his father and brother dying mysteriously is a thing that we're introduced to as a cloud on his reputation or whatever, or make us not trust him. It takes a little while longer for us to understand how that he did that for sure and how bad he is. That
maybe we never find that out. Maybe we never find out that he killed him. Probably not going. I don't know if it's important later. I assume not. The way things are going. Yep.
Well,
don't say shit.
I wouldn't say if it was.
Yeah,
but I mean, I think that there is some narrative utility to having an outright monster like that around, but also some intrigue around that could have been good. And again, I think we talked about this in the last episode, that was just a weird giant swing for that character to take that didn't land for us as the audience, because the characters he was murdering are not people that we really had relationships established with.
Yeah.
Which is a problem with all the herky jerky moving around from episode to episode, is it doesn't feel like we have a strong relationship to anybody except for a couple of very core characters here, even after all this time spent building them up. And again,
I don't know. I mean, I'm finding them all to be fairly rounded. Like I love the thing they did with the sea snake's son. I forget the character's name. Right, it's one of the Lanors. Okay, like that. The coding on that, the coloring on that, I thought was really, really good. Actually, like I have like they had to get rid of him for their plots, but they didn't kill him. I thought that was cool. Now, well, no, I just said this was really well done. Now I'm actually kind of questioning that, because I'm still not sure who was involved in all those decisions. Was he with them every step of the way there?
I think so. I think the weirdest thing about that for me, though, is just how that guy's parents still believe that Damon and Rhaenyra had him killed, and yet they're going to join their team anyway. And that doesn't ring quite true to me.
Well, shit. You know what? I take it back. I'm not as impressed with that. Okay.
Because I could buy that in this, very cynical world, that there are certain lords out there that would find a way to excuse the murder of their eldest son, who was something of a black sheep anyway, because of his sexual orientation, and was not going to give him an heir or whatever. I could see some lords in Westeros finding a way to get over that, to join up with a team that will advance their overall position more. That does not appear to me to fit with the characterization of Corlys and Rhaenys thus far.
It's a conversation I'd love to hear them have. They sort of did,
had, yeah,
but not really. Yeah.
Where it's like, do they not fully believe that? I mean, I don't know. But
and the bastard kids as well. That's another part of that. I don't quite know. I don't quite know where they all stand, which is odd after a season of television about that.
I think it's something that bears more discussion among those characters. I mean, he had the line or something about how, like, history doesn't remember blood, it remembers names. So he's seemed to be saying, like,
yeah, fuck it.
Like, I know this is not my blood, but they're going to carry on my legacy anyway. And, I guess implying, like, and they seem like the nice, the closest thing we have to Starks in the South. So maybe I'd rather have that than flipping a coin with the Targaryen kids that you get with real Targaryens. I guess I came around on Rhaenyra a bit in this last episode. I mean, obviously she lost 2 children in the span of one episode, and that
Jesus,
is
that
hard not to sympathize with.
Like, I can't. Like, that just seemed so unnecessary.
Yeah, that is. I mean, it's a pretty big thing in the book, and
that she hand delivered her stillborn child.
No. Just the idea that the book chronicles a lot of stillbirths and deaths during childbirth among the Targaryen family, because it's so focused on who inherits what and how and in what order, and the show is really focused in on that, to sort of the horrors of childbearing and childbirth in a medieval setting.
Sure is.
And how also
to keep my wife away from it entirely. Yeah. Actually, she's absolutely not on this show. After the first one, she was like, nah.
Fair enough. That first C-section scene was rough going. But I guess the show has gotten that across, though, that concept that, those births are hugely important, and the fate of nations and the future of kingdoms hinge as much on those births as they do on these major battles in a lot of cases.
And this is a thing. There's been a discourse on this show recently. And I mean, I think this has always been part of Game of Thrones, which is, like, it's fantasy. You don't need it to be as sexist as it is, and it's kind of a canard to say, well, that's history when there are dragons in the show. But this is like what the show is about: primogeniture. Yeah. This is this entire system of government, which is, basically what we had in the Middle Ages, historically, it's sort of the whole deal with kings and queens, is very much what House of the Dragon is about, more than Game of Thrones was about. And
Yes.
so you kind of have to do that stuff. It is what the show is. Like, to take that out means it's a very different show, a completely different show. And you can't even really do that because Game of Thrones has established that this is the form of government.
And this is the world and the politics of that world. And you're right that, I mean, or at least the straw man you were quoting is right, that you don't have to, it doesn't have to be this sexist because it's fantasy, but it does kind of need to be the sexist because it's about patriarchy and medieval stuff that still, we carry around a lot of it around in our current political system still. And it's still in the DNA of our society. And the whole point of the world of Westeros is trying to bring more of that ugliness and that real politic into the high fantasy setting. So yeah, you could do Narnia and make it less sexist.
And that show, Lord of the Rings, is
Right.
is that show for a certain audience, as I was saying, who are enjoying it at Game of Thrones. That is serving that purpose, and I think doing a pretty good job of it. So I understand the complaint actually, and I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. But at the same time, it's Game of Thrones. That's the whole. That's what it is at its core.
Yeah,
And
it circles back to what, but people's hating the final seasons of Game of Thrones though, and to me, why I am somewhat of a defender of those is that I feel like a lot of that hate is rooted around the basic fallacy of trying to expect Game of Thrones to be aspirational.
Oh man, yeah,
and it's very much trying to do something different than that. And that doesn't mean that every case of of violence or misogyny or bigotry or whatever is totally justified, or that you can't present them in better ways or worse ways. But if it's supposed to be a show about how girls rule and men drool, then I just don't think that's this is not the show you're looking for. That's not it's not. George Martin, I guess, is not interested in looking for pat answers like that. He's like trying to complicate things and overcomplicate them to his detriment even.
And I don't think anyone would care if this were just one of the many fantasy shows out there. Honestly, it's the big one though. It is sort of the most popular one, and I think that's why it has the most eyes, the most reactions, and that's all that is really. It's just happens to be one of the most venal, mean-spirited ones, rose to the top. I would say through by being really good, but it's not that's what we gravitate towards.
And now we're getting the one where it really is structured as this battle between these two women, but a battle in this world that's going to be as long and bloody as this one, that's driven by two women, is not going to make those women look great. And I'm not sure there's any way to square that circle to make it a feel-good version of that story.
I think they got to lean into it, which I guess that they have to. There's really no other choice. I don't know. People are complaining about them being softened. I would say more rounded, but again, I haven't read the book.
Again, it's a weird thing that the book doesn't establish anything in stone, so I think it's strange to say that it softens or hardens anybody. But
interesting. Okay.
But there certainly, you feel the like I said, it becomes a comedy of errors at a certain point. Where
totally.
Nobody means for any of these things to happen. And I prefer, I guess that is my beef with the Aemond thing, is I would prefer more intentionality. Even if the character's intention is to slam on the brakes and events conspire against them. That's one thing, but Aemond was intending to terrorize and attack the person, but just not knock them out of the air. I mean, he was trying to go 70 and he accidentally took it up to 90. Like, it's not.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. I don't know what we lose by having that be an intentional kill, or at least one that he's okay with. That he's just like,
if he shrugs it off.
Yeah. One of those. And that, they probably had a cut a take of him being more like that, and made the decision in the edit. But whatever.
Yeah.
You know what? He's like you said. It doesn't fundamentally change Aemond in any way.
No.
He's still the same guy. Either way you read that scene.
But I think the stuff with Alicent and Rhaenyra worked out pretty well for me overall. And one of the reasons why I think I was more sympathetic to Alicent than Rhaenyra throughout the season, and then a lot of viewers, I guess, is that I did feel like during that middle stretch, there was a point where Alicent was willing to like at least take some tentative steps towards reconciling this rift. And by way of saying, like, her terms are, and I will let you, Rhaenyra, take the throne. It wasn't like, let's make nice, and the way we do that is you let my son take the throne. It's like, I'm trying to make nice with you, or let you take over, and what I need is assurances that my children will be safe if you're in power. And Rhaenyra did not, I think, take the necessary steps to try and reach that peaceful resolution, which still would have given her what she wanted. And that made me less sympathetic to Rhaenyra generally.
Yeah, they've done a great job of making Rhaenyra not as sympathetic, even as she's the one I want to win. Like you say, you're a big Otto Hightower fan, right?
I am. I like Rhys Ifans. I think is great.
He might be the best actor on the show. I'd probably give that to Paddy Considine as MVP for this season, but he's wonderful, Rhys Ifans, and I love this character. I think this guy's great. I love how they're handling him. I sense he comes across very differently to different parts of the audience too.
Yeah, some people seem to just absolutely hate him, and I'm like, he's just no nonsense. Like,
he's cool. He's just a guy who handles his shit. That's exactly the sort of guy you want as hand of the king. I mean, unless he betrays you for his own kids, I guess, which he could.
But I don't think he's wrong to think that his grandkids' lives are in danger if
and he also saw
Daemon are in charge.
And he also saw Viserys's flaws. He saw the mistakes that Viserys was making. Nobody else, it feels like, on the show saw that except him.
No, and I didn't get the sense that he ever really betrayed Viserys. No, I think he tried to steer him and manipulate him somewhat to ends that, yes, we're better for Otto, but I think he genuinely believes that the realm is better off with the High Towers in power than they are with Daemon. I happen to agree with that assessment as well.
I do think the show could use a Viserys, or not a Viserys, a Varys, a guy who is, that we believe fundamentally is trying his best within the corridors of power to serve the realm. I don't think that's quite Otto.
Well, even a Tyrion,
Tyrion would be filling that role too.
Otto's much more of a Tywin, where not a nice guy, but not a sadist, and you get the sense that he's going to do bad stuff. It's going to be to a purpose.
Yes.
So, anyhow, look, it's
fun.
Weird. I found myself weirdly comparing it to the Phantom Menace.
Well, it's prequel shit, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I mean,
but also feeling like it's a prequel series, but also we're going to start off with a whole prequel to the prequels.
Okay, I see what you mean.
And that's an unflattering comparison to it for a show that I generally did enjoy, but also like, I think we started to see with the finale a jump up into what it's going to be going forward, which is smoother temporally from like transition from one episode to another. We're going to start seeing more places and different people. And I think that's all going to be very exciting.
I'm down for it. Although I got to tell you, more than Lord of the Rings season 2 or House of the Dragon season 2, I think I'm more excited to see The Witcher season 3.
I never got past the first episode of that series.
It's real good. It's a real good show.
Can I put you on a assignment to find me an R-rated high fantasy series that doesn't have terrible platinum blonde wigs on its main characters? Why is this a necessity in 2022 for some reason?
I was going to say Wheel of Time, but it does, and it's worse than all of them.
That's not even R-rated, I guess. That's more. It's feel like a PG-13. I don't know.
Okay, that's a fair point. I can't argue with that.
It's a dumb point, but it's a fair point. It's the Ned Stark of points. All right, let's.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
That's it. All right.
We'll be back for these shows.
Oh, for sure.
You know,
Mhm.
we can't be done with this stuff. This is our wheelhouse.
Yeah. How do we end this? The end.